So it's great that I don't actually really need to introduce these people to you, but we should introduce them for the people who are at home. So I'll introduce each one of you as we go along. If you want to just say a little bit about your background and what connected you to how you got connected to the film. So first we have Carney Anne Nasser, who is our clinical research fellow here with our Harvard Animal Law and Policy program.
Do you want me to talk about
Just quick introduction of who you are.
Yeah, so prior to being the director of the Animal Welfare Clinic at Michigan State, I worked for a few different animal protection organizations, including working with Chris. And that's been the last 11 years of my legal career, with a primary focus on the Endangered Species Act and the protection of big cats in captivity and in the wild. And you can't work in that community and not cross paths with Tim Harrison. And we connected, and he told me that he was working on a project to put together what do you call it? What was the team you called it?
Oh, the Avengers.
The Avengers.
We were the Avengers because every once in a while we'll have to make out a call. Yeah. Carney Anne, we need you to assemble. Jeff, we need you to assemble. We'll be gone for a few months or 6 months, and you'll call me or Chris will call. Well, the Avengers have to assemble, and we just go doing our own thing, and then bang, we all come together like that. Yeah. That's exactly right. Yeah.
There are a few people who, when they ask me, can you get on board with this? And most of them are sitting up here with me, and I say yes, just tell me what time. So that's how I got involved.
Great. And Tim Harrison, again, for recording this, so for people who might not just have watched the film, just tell a little bit about, your background and how you got involved in the film.
Yeah, my name's Tim Harrison, of course, it's on the card. I'm a retired police officer, firefighter, paramedic. I'm currently an adjunct instructor for TEECS NERTC, the National Emergency Response and Recovery Training Center down at Texas A&M College. I'm director of Outreach for Animals. A bunch of cops got together, tried to teach proper behavior around wildlife. And that's pretty much what I do. I'm an author of a few books. I got a new book out if you're interested called White Magic. Look for White Magic with Nora the White Tiger on it and Tim Harrison. All the proceeds come to Outreach for Animals.
And Jeff?
Yeah, I'm Jeff Kremer. I spent 20 plus years in the corporate world in international aerospace firm. I always had a passion for animals. That led me to my wife and I leave our careers in the corporate world, and I went to work for our local AZA accredited zoo. That really was my aha moment halfway into that career. And so that career led me into the sanctuary world. I worked for at GFAS, Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries, GFAS accredited big cat sanctuary for a number of years, and that's what led me into the to work with this wonderful team on the conservation team, Michael Weber, and everybody that's here today.
Great. So during the credits of the film, you intersperse some of the impact. I mean, everyone really hopes you make a documentary and it has actual impact, but this is pretty amazing that the film isn't even out for public release yet, and it's already had substantial impact. Carney Anne, can you talk a little bit about the impact that's happened even since what we learned in the credits?
Yeah, I mean, the initial impact, as you saw, was immediate. And what has happened since then is that the AZA revoked the accreditation of the Columbus Zoo, which is, that's huge because that's like the San Diego Zoo losing its accreditation. That's the magnitude of that. And it's been the flagship institution of the AZA for 40 years. So that's significant change. Susie Rapp also very suddenly retired. Every single person at the helm of the leadership, the C-suite, involved in the animal programming at the Columbus Zoo was either forced out or retired since the film premiered. And aside from the Columbus Zoo doing a 180-degree change and so vocally supporting the Big Cat Public Safety Act, a number of other AZA-accredited zoos who had not yet spoken up have spoken up and have supported the Big Cat Public Safety Act, and consequently Senator Rob Portman, who is such an influential voice, not just in Ohio, but nationally, has now become a co-sponsor of the Big Cat Public Safety Act, which is major. And I know there are even more, there are even more than
There's
that.
one more, too. There's no more Obies. They retired them.
they retired them.
After all those years of everybody fighting over that, it just took one visit
I mean,
and one
again,
documentary.
the film isn't even out yet for public release, and it's already had this kind of impact. Like literally, Jack Hanna saying he will never talk to the media again the day after it has its first ever showing. My understanding too is that when you did screenings in Columbus, it was so popular that you had to keep adding extra dates, and every show for 2 weeks sold out at the movie theater.
Yeah, and Dayton, too, also Dayton, Ohio. And actually, I think the one that really hammered well was in San Diego. I thought they showed it at the theater, and then they went out to Lions, Tigers, and Bears with Bobby Brink and had 300 people out there paying $55 to donate back to the cats. And this young lady right here, my hero, Nola, the white tiger, lives beautifully there. You have to go there and see her someday. You're not going to even, it's not even the same cat. And I never want to see that again. That's one of the reasons we're up here, because we see too much of this. And you did a heck of a job. I can't say enough. But Nola just breaks your heart. And that's what we see on a regular basis. Bears, other things like that too. So yeah.
I didn't even have direct contact, this is a side note, I didn't even have direct contact with Nola during this filming that you saw while she was being worked on by veterinarians at the Audubon Zoo. So credit to the Audubon Zoo for helping out and rehabilitating her. But I got ringworm all over my face. And that's what Nola also had going on her face. So, there's a component of this as well that's, obviously the public safety issue and the animal welfare issues are really significant, but there's an issue relating to zoonotic diseases as well.
Yeah, we almost lost the director, Mike Weber, on the first film. If you guys want to see the first one, it's The Elephant in the Living Room. It's on Amazon Prime for free. Please check it out. Watch it through the credits. Again, he likes to put little things in there. Happy ending in it. But Mike almost died during the filming of that. We had to actually stop for 6 months, and they didn't think he was going to make it from the little mites that were on the African lions.
Yeah.
He got a bacterial infection.
He had to be treated by a veterinarian, not a medical doctor. True story.
Yeah, Cleveland Clinic couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, zoonotic disease from these animals. That's one thing that this doesn't even touch on either, that there's so much ability to catch zoonotic diseases. And for those at home, the Nola that they're referencing is a tiger cub that was found in New Orleans, like chained up in a backyard and had cuts all over its face and was severely underweight and had various parasites. Tim, you talked about Elephant in the Living Room, which again is a fantastic documentary that sort of examines private ownership of dangerous wild animals, and I feel does a really honest, objective analysis of trying to really understand the mentality of folks who engage in this. And I think treats them quite fairly, and with the understanding that the approach that if you don't understand these people, if you just vilify them, then you're not going to be able to solve the problem. Can you talk a little bit about how you first connected with the director Mike Weber and how you guys started on this journey together making these films?
That was kind of unusual. I gave up. I was actually on Animal Planet. I've been on numerous shows. What's the first thing they want to do? Take your shirt off, put your jungle hat on, wrestle a gator. That's why I like Mike put that in there. That's what they wanted me to do. I couldn't do it anymore. I was done, absolutely done doing anything on TV, period. And as you can tell, I have a personality and I can be on TV. I don't want to, unless it's something worthwhile. Well, Mike was bugging me. I had 2 books out before that he got, and he was filming. He actually does Lionsgate and 20th Century Fox movies, actual movies. So he wanted to do a documentary. So somebody gave him the books, and he was reading them in Poland while he's filming the horror movie. And he's like, calls me up at 3 a.m. I'm answering the phone because I have to, because people call because there's tigers in their basements and things like that. So I'm talking to this guy, and I'm wondering who the heck he is, right? He's telling me, he really talks fast. Oh my gosh, it's going to be fantastic. I want you to be my first documentary. If anything half true in these books you've written, it's going to be the greatest documentary ever made. And I'm going, talk to me tomorrow at this time, right? So he gets together and he films me for 6 months. I'm like, a long story short, he takes that filming just for 6 months, and it wasn't my busy time. Took it, did something with it, took it to Silver Docks International Film Festival in Maryland, and won. And he won the ACE Award, so he calls me up again like in the middle of the night and says, we got the money to finish a documentary. So I forgot all about him, and then, okay, great. So he come over and started filming, and that's how we got to meet. And from that point on, I realized, I told him, I said, you only get one shot. Like Animal Planet, we put the snake back and do it again. Take the snake back, do it again. I told him, from this point on, you get one shot. That's it. If you go in a rescue, he's got tons of rescues, or go in and get something, you get one shot. That's it. And he did it. And he's 6 foot, what, 3 or 4? He disappears into the crowd of people we're dealing with. Like you see the elephant in the living room, that's the style I use, we all use. It's a kind of a thing I've developed over the years, but it works. It's not their fault they got this tiger. It's the exploiters that, sold it to them. It's the people on TV, monkey see, monkey do. If you don't believe that, watch the show Jackass, take it from a paramedic. We had special conferences on jackass-type injuries. Little do we know is people are going to take staple guns and staple their nipples, right? Or staple their nose. And that night there'll be 1,000 across the country the paramedics are called out on. So we get the monkey see, monkey do. 101 Dalmatians. What happens? Anybody who works in the animal industry, bam! Everybody goes out and buys them, and they all dumped it the very next month. So that's what kind of happens in that situation. But yeah, it was Mike and I told Mike, I am in a couple other college documentaries, and then I did one other one called The Hidden Tiger that they wanted me to do. It's a great one, too. It's out right now, too, called The Hidden Tiger. I'm only in it for a little bit, but it's beautiful footage of tigers over in Nepal where I was at over there. Beautiful. But I've talked too much, so.
But it was in the course of filming The Elephant in the Living Room that they went to these exotic animal auctions.
Yes, yep.
And it was there that you saw
A lot.
the celebrity
People.
conservationists acquiring and dumping animals, and that was really, I think, the genesis of the conservation game, which
That's
has
it.
been 10 years in the making.
Putting the pieces together, and I think that's, when you saw the mural, Tim working with a mural on the wall, we actually had a real mural. It's actually a virtual software platform. So we would need 30 TV monitors here to show you the virtual but we had that all connected in the virtual world with every person that we were tracking, every animal we were tracking. So what you saw in the film was only the tip of the iceberg. I mean, we have Jack and all the other exploiters with numerous other species of cats and animals, and it had to be narrowed down for the film. But it's, as both my colleagues say, it's not an anomaly, it's systemic, it's a massive problem. And the people that had the TV shows, they're not to blame. They were misled just like us, the public. They were lied to. So they don't know better. They were asking the good questions like, was this a good idea to bring them on the show? Well, no, it wasn't. They were asking
Under their eyes open.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a massive problem that the public's been shielded from.
And Jeff, can you talk a little bit about other work you've done in the animal protection sphere and then how you directly got involved in the film?
Yeah, so I was involved with, went into the zoological world, and first two years of the zoological world was, my wife and I, we both left our corporate jobs, and we thought it was nirvana. It was a zoo that I was born and raised in the Tampa Bay area, so I thought we would work there for the rest of our careers, and we were working around 1,200 animals, and I worked my way up into management, so we literally were tube feeding baby manatees, working with the new elephants we brought in from Swaziland, and got to work with all the animal caretakers. But about the 2-year mark, we stopped drinking the purple Kool-Aid because we saw issues within the zoos, and tried to address them by bringing solutions and bringing our own money to the table to say, here's how we can address some of the animal welfare and human safety issues. And it's a 100% good old boy network. 99% of the zoos in the country, AZA accredited zoos, are led by men. And in our zoo, it was typical of most, is they wanted you to be the yes person. They didn't want anything to change. It had to follow strict protocol. And so when we tried to affect positive changes, we were put on a blacklist. There were some terrible things that happened there, including a Sumatran tiger that got out due to human error. And it's a whole other story, but the Sumatran tiger was shot and killed by the CEO. But it just was story after story after story. So after 2 years of trying to make positive change, we left the zoo, and my wife and I singly formed I had purchased some URLs, domains, that the zoo wasn't protecting in their infinite wisdom, and they had come to us and said, what are your intentions, your and your wife's intentions? We said, well, we just want to do something good for the animals in the zoo. We want to start an animal enrichment program, because at the time they had no animal enrichment program. So we said, we'll donate all the URLs back to the domains, back to the zoo, which was over 6 figures, and we'll give you $2,500 in seed money just to start an animal enrichment program. And sitting around the board table with all the powers that be, they looked at us and said, well, how do we get $2,500 for the zoo to do that? And at the time, the CEO was making over $300,000, and it was just nonsense. So we chose to leave the zoo. I took those URLs, I created a online platform and started exposing them for all the animal welfare and human safety violations. And we were included in a Pulitzer Prize winning book about it. It rattled the cages of the zoo, as NPR said. So we held them accountable, and we were forced to settle out of court. And all we can say is something that good happened for the animals. But I'd done that, and I'd done a lot of research for companion animal feline immunology. We had a cat that was diagnosed with a cancer that resulted from her vaccination. So longer story short, my research skills came from just passions of the heart, wanting to do good for the animals, and it led me to this project, which I was introduced to Michael Weber, and it was just a dream come true as far as a power team.
That's the same thing too. Also, remember when you said 90% or so, 99% is men. Now go to sanctuaries. There's only Pat
Women.
Craig.
Yep.
The rest are women. So the ones caring about the animals are the individuals that care. The ones that want to. Remember, Jack Hanna just sold his ranch for $4 million.
Yeah.
He's got 2 other $1 million homes. He was a director of a nonprofit zoo. That's enough. You don't have to say anymore.
I'll interject. We still have friends in the zoo world, having worked there all the way up to upper management. Well, we found there's 2 distinct sides of the zoological world. There's the animal caretaking side, and those people are exactly like us. They would give their lives for those animals. And there's the operation side, and that's the business side, and I work for both sides. And the business side is all about the dollars. So what happens is you start butting heads. And I can tell you from personal experience and what I've seen mirrored in other zoos across the country is that almost every single time the dollar is going to win that decision. And that's where the compromises in animal welfare and human safety occur.
So Tim, a week ago, Monday, October 18th, marked the 10-year anniversary of the Zanesville, Ohio tragedy. I was overseas at the time that happened when Terry Thompson doused himself in chicken blood and let 60 animals loose around 4 p.m. in Zanesville, Ohio, causing law enforcement, giving them no other option than having to kill these animals before they ran 60 different directions. So as night was falling. I was overseas, and it was the #1 international news story that entire weekend, and framed as like another example of just American excess. Like why is this even possible? And just the images of those majestic animals lying cold and dead in the mud the next morning. At the time, Ohio was one of, I think, only 5 states that had absolutely no restrictions on dangerous wild animals. They did have one previously under Governor Strickland, but then Governor Kasich refused to renew the executive order, and 6 months later, here's where we were. You were actively involved in that. Can you talk a little bit about that and some of the aftermath?
Yeah, it's first of all, we'll talk about Governor Strickland. Governor Strickland, we had 4 people killed in our state by exotic animals: venomous snakes, constriction, bear, wrestling bear, partially ate a kid, and then he died. So we had 4 deaths. We had numerous animals killed within less than a 2-year period. Governor Strickland stepped forward and said, we need an executive order to stop this madness. We had the auctions. I actually did 2006, I did an undercover piece, first time ever, of the auctions, and it was done with Inside Edition of all people. Nobody else had the guts to go in with me at that time, TV-wise. They went in and won all kinds of awards with it. And it woke up the world a little bit about what the heck's going on? Average people bringing dangerous animals in. Well, that kind of lines you up now with what happened at Zanesville. Now, we had the executive order. Everything was great. Real quick story, I was in New York. The film was showing on Broadway, The Elephant in the Living Room. Howard Stern was there. Everybody was there. It was a big deal. Everything was going great. So I was on Sirius Radio. And then Jay Thomas was a gentleman interviewing me. And he says, Tim, I just got a letter here. It says that Governor Kasich just dropped the executive order after he said he was going to sign it. Because he became governor. Governor Strickland, we thought was going to win. He didn't win. Kasich won. So he said he was going to sign it. Well, his advisor was Jack Hanna. All right, so Jack Hanna's his best bet. Jack Hanna, we can't have this. So we got Jack the same as we're getting Jack on the national basis in Ohio. He didn't want this to happen. They dropped it. He asked me, how do you feel? I said, do you ever see the movie Jaws? He goes, yeah, he's like the mayor in Jaws. I said, he knows 4 people were killed by something here. There's a problem here. But he's saying, go back in the water. We have no problem in the state of Ohio until it swims up and bites him in the ass physically, morally, or financially, which it did 6 months later when the Zanesville massacre happened. Now, there's a prophetic speech out there that somebody put out there, and I don't know who it is. We think it's a Ohio State College kid, where I actually spoke at the Capitol building to Kasich and all the people in the Capitol. And I'm speaking, they're all on the tundra, all up there. And I'm telling them, you can't put your head in the sand, this is going to happen, nobody's listening to us. Terry Thompson actually said, while he was in court, if you put me in prison, because he's going to jail for selling illegal guns, if you put me in prison, Judge, when I get out, I'm going to turn all my effing animals loose and I'm going to blow my effing brains out. We know this. Anybody with common sense is paying attention to this now, right? So we're fighting like all get out to get this law of executive order passed. And at that time, the Humane Society of the United States said, as soon as it's signed, that's the first place we're going, because at that time there was over 100 animals on this property. 38 big cats, grizzly bears, baboons, orangutan at one time.
And under the previous executive order, if Terry Thompson wouldn't qualify for the exemption clause because he had been convicted of several felonies, including animal welfare violations, so that's why his animals would have been confiscated.
Immediately, that's exactly right, because he was first on the list, and he was still in prison. So we're fighting. We know he's coming out, and we know what he's going to do. He told us. And I'm fighting with Governor Kasich. I mean, literally, as I don't know if you weren't around for that at that time, but you remember I was fighting with Governor Kasich, like face to face with him. And it was like out of control. He would not change his mind. Nothing's going to change. And he was forewarned. The prophetic speech even says it when I said it to them all. And this college kid put it together. It's great. And it wasn't even less than a year later that it happens. And there's nobody that didn't know what's not going to happen in the animal world. We all knew it. But the one thing he got away with, he did not have to have a USDA license because he didn't do anything. People just dumped the animals on his property. He allegedly never showed them. He never sold them.
Although that was proven otherwise.
Yeah, I know. And he also showed up on Rachel Ray's show showing animals, which people didn't even know about. And he was starting to be like Grant Kimmerer. You're absolutely right. But that's how he got away with it, not having a USDA license. So nobody ever went on his property and checked it. It was a pigsty. It's literally a pigsty. And we talk about Chris and I, that's the worst thing I ever seen in my life. When they were dragging the cats up and stacking them up, especially the cats and the bears. The wolves too, and they were all bad, but they were stacking them up, and you're thinking, this is a beautiful farm in the middle of Ohio, and there's leopards dead laying out here on the hill. And the police officers are all messed up. They had post-traumatic syndrome. We all were messed up. We're all crying over the whole thing, but it was horrible. It was the worst evening. As I teach in Texas A&M in disasters, that was the worst terrorist event where somebody used dangerous wild animals as walking, thinking IEDs, explosives, turned them loose on the city on purpose, and then killed themselves. So it was the biggest terrorist event of its kind in the world.
Every single example in our country of these exotic animal owners, it all comes down to the same two denominating factors, and it's always ego or money or both. Every single time, either the person has an emotional attachment, gets a lot of popularity and a lot of attention from showing the animal, or they're making a lot of money off of them, or both. That's the two denominating factors all the time.
I had graduation one year here, about maybe 3 years ago or 4 years ago. I was walking out of my place to the gym, and I encountered John Kasich on a street corner. And I let him know that the blood of Zanesville was on his hands, and told him he was very lucky that wasn't a pile of dead kids. Because if Thompson had been just a little bit more crazy, released those animals in the middle of the night, who knows what would have happened.
Yep. There is one photo.
His driver was not happy with me.
I remember what you said. It was I appreciate it.
Yeah.
People of Ohio appreciate it.
There's a more profane version, but yes. Now, you said too that Jack Hanna was there on site at Zanesville, right?
He showed up the next morning with makeup on. If you want to see those pictures, go to Outreach for Animals, follow us on Facebook, go down to the anniversary date, and you'll see me and Jack and I arguing in the instant command post pictures. People kept saying, "You argued with him before?" I've argued with him for 20 years. It's not like, this is not new. This is when I'm at begging him for help, and he wouldn't come across. But yeah, it was a bad situation all the way around. It could have been prevented. And I was just interviewed by a UK group that were talking about, how does that make you feel that you warned them it was going to happen? How does that make you feel? And I said, it's like somebody just punched me in the soul. You know, it really did, because my soul was hurting. My body, not my body, but just my soul hurt that we knew it was going to happen. And I even teasingly said, it's like a bunch of guys holding me and my granddaughter's running towards the interstate and the semi's coming and she's going to get hit. That's what I felt like, and they wouldn't let go of me and nobody listened.
Wow.
It's a horrible feeling. And you know, we all been there. Yeah.
A quick question. I may be misremembering, but didn't Jack step in and rather than letting you rehome the animals to GFAS accredited sanctuaries, he made sure they went to Columbus, the survivors went to the Columbus Zoo and roadside zoos?
Yes, that's what we all know now that we see the conservation game, and I work with these beautiful people here. This is the greatest team on the planet. We don't have Keith Gadd's not here, the National Park Ranger, and Russ Muntz, the only two that's left out, and Mike Weber, the director.
Mike Weber's
Yeah, Mike Weber, the
okay.
guy put it all together. It was a master putting together. As you can see, I won't work with anybody else. And what happened was that people didn't realize that, and he immediately showed up that morning. He wasn't there that night and everything went down. He showed up that morning from West Virginia doing a show with Cubs in West Virginia. So he came in, had makeup on, all set to go, as you'll see when you look at the pictures. You'll see, looks pretty good. So he comes in, and all of a sudden we had it all set up. We had to go into a Black Pine Animal Sanctuary. It was going to house the animals for a period of time, which we've done with them before in Indiana. They're GFAS, and they're also credited that the animals can stay there legally until the court systems make a decision where they're supposed to go. Because they can't take the cats. I told them that night. You guys know me. You see me on Fox and CNN telling everybody she's getting her animals back. We had it happen in Texas. Lady sold 6 tiger cubs from a van, and they took them away from her. I said, you're going to have to give them back to her. You have no law here. No. They did 6 weeks later. Same with Marion, who had the cats. She ended up getting her animals back, and she lives in Hilton Head now and has many, many horses. So she did very well with the Columbus Zoo taking the cat. But Jack, as you saw in the conservation game, he wanted total control of the animals that were still alive, that I helped keep alive, and he wanted to get them in the ground as fast as he could. Guess who called the shovels? He did. It wasn't the sheriff. He called for the shovels to come in and start burying the animals before the sheriff and the rest of us had I didn't want them buried there because they're worth more dead than alive. And people did try to come in and start digging them up. But the whole thing is he wanted them out of sight, out of mind, as fast as he could before the sun even came up hardly.
And wasn't one of the leopards at the Columbus Zoo killed in an accident? Yeah.
That was so sad, too. After they took him to the Columbus Zoo, they dropped one of the gates down. But the one thing I have to say, the leopards had such bad bone disease and deformities and everything, had stress fractures on the necropsies. You could have done a karate chop and broke its neck. But yeah, they dropped it. They dropped it on its neck, killed it, which kind of made him even look worse. They should never, I have no idea, because the zoo director at that time, who was let go after going against Jack that evening, and then he put Tom Stoff in, who is fired here just recently. That's how bad a guy he is. But that zoo director before looked him right in the face. We do not want these animals on our property. They're not pristine. We have pristine animals. We do not want them. The vet did not want them to come to the concert. It was Jack all the way.
And it seems, especially interesting now in light of this, why Jack was in such a hurry to get those animals in the ground before they could be identified.
No pictures, no necropsies.
Yep.
And as a police officer, that does not happen. No crime scene. You have videotape, you have pictures of everything that's dead. It could be a pit bull or whatever it is. And you have, you mark the area where they were shot. You do everything by the book. Nothing. Zero. And boy, I was mad. But you can see on those pictures, I was a little upset.
And Carney Anne, so the film ends talking about the Big Cat Public Safety Act. Can you talk a little bit about the specific provisions of that act and where things stand now with it moving through Congress?
Yeah, so the Big Cat Public Safety Act has 2 really important components. And the first component is that it would prohibit public contact with big cats. And that is the lucrative incentive for all of these guys to engage in this breed and dump activity, because under the Animal Welfare Act, it's only legal for cubs to be offered for public contact between approximately 8 and 12 weeks of age. So when they age out, they got to go somewhere. It costs $10,000 a year just to feed a tiger. So they're no longer moneymakers. They're just financial and safety liabilities. So they get dumped in the exotic pet trade. And the second component is that it prohibits big cats as pets. Right now we have this patchwork of state laws. There's zero uniformity. We still have 4 states that have zero regulation over the private ownership of big cats. I mean, that news footage was from years ago that said, you know, there's some states where it's more challenging to own a dog than a tiger, and that's still the case in 4 states. So by eliminating big cats as pets across the board, we establish that much needed uniformity of law and eliminate the dumping ground for cats who've aged out of cub petting. Because the cub petting is, you know, some of these cats, what we found is they're offered for up to 60 sessions a day, anywhere between, you know, $50 to thousands of dollars per session. So you can do the math. It's extreme. I mean, one cub can yield up to $1 million in revenue during their young lifetime for some of these exploiters. So it's a very lucrative business. And so those are the 2 key components to not completely eliminate, because we're talking about people who are notorious for flouting the law. And you can tell many of these people, if you're engaged in wildlife trafficking, you're probably not limiting your criminal activity to just that. So we're talking about people who don't, as a base point, care that much about following laws. But it does give the federal government, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, a basis to go in and get cats out of those situations, rehome them to reputable, accredited sanctuaries. So that's why the Big Cat Public Safety Act is so important. Where it stands now, so it did pass U.S. House of Representatives. The previous session, while the movie was being filmed, the congressional session ended before the Senate voted on it. However, it has been reintroduced back into the House and the Senate this congressional session, and now with broader bipartisan support, the support of Senator Rob Portman, who is such a key player in all of this. I mean, with the movie now, there's really not ever been a more likely opportunity for it to pass. And this is not new legislation. I know that many of us in the animal law world may have been familiar with it being introduced over the past several years.